Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place you come to when you want to understand the really complicated histories, the contested stories. We dig through the sources, check the facts, and basically give you the essential shortcut.
And today, we're diving into arguably one of the most recognized, most iconic structures on the entire planet, the Taj Mahal.
Yep, instantly recognizable. Everyone knows it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's officially one of the seven wonders of the world, often called the ultimate symbol of, undying love.
But it's more complicated than that now, isn't it? For a lot of people, maybe especially online, it's become this lightning rod for some really intense modern arguments.
That's exactly right. It's less a settled piece of history for some and more a battleground for controversy.
So when you, the listener, start looking into this, you dig into the sources, whether it's like 17th century court records or recent legal petitions filed in India, you immediately run into two completely different stories.
Completely different realities almost. On the one hand, you've got the story most of us learned, the grand, beautiful tomb built by the Mughal emperor Shah Jahan for his favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal.
That's the textbook version, right? The romance.
Right. But then on the other side, you have these persistent and actually quite visible claims that challenge everything. Was it really Shah Jahan's commission? Or was it actually a much older building, maybe a 13th century Hindu temple called Tejo Mahalaya that he just sort of took over?
And the controversies don't stop just there, do they?
Right.
There are these other stories that just seem to stick around. You hear about the supposed cruelty involved.
No, the chopped hands myth.
Exactly. That Shah Jahan maimed, 20,000 workers so they couldn't build anything as beautiful ever again. And then there's the whole mystery about secrets hidden within the structure itself.
The 22 closed doors in the basement. Yeah, that one's been in the news quite a bit recently.
So our mission today for this deep dive is pretty clear. We're going deep into the actual source material. We've gathered the Mughal court records, the architectural analysis, the archaeological findings, the court judgments.
And we're going to carefully unpack it all. Separate out the documented historical facts from, well, the unsubstantiated claims, the myths, the modern conjecture.
The goal is simple. By the end of this, we want you to be genuinely well-informed about this incredible, globally famous, but highly contested monument.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start at the beginning, lay the foundation with the accepted, documented history. What do the contemporary sources actually tell us?
Right, so let's start with the key figures in the established narrative. First, the emperor himself, Shah Jahan. He was born Prince Khurram, which apparently means joyous.
Joyous. Interesting contrast to his later image, maybe.
Well, his chosen royal title, Shah Jahan, that means king of the world. That definitely reflects the power and the sheer grandeur of the Mughal Empire during his reign. It was really at its peak.
And the woman at the heart of it all, Mumtaz Mahal. Her birth name was Arjman Banu Begum, born in 1593.
Yes. And their story, according to the records, begins with an engagement in 1607. But the formal marriage actually happened 5 years later in 1612.
Now, it's probably important to set the scene here, politically speaking. Shah Jahan, like other Mughal emperors, he did have other wives, Kandahari Mahal, Akbarabadi Mahal.
Right, but the sources are pretty consistent on this. Those marriages were primarily political alliances. Standard practice for consolidating power, building dynastic ties, that sort of thing.
Okay, so necessary for the empire, but maybe not affairs of the heart.
That's the crucial distinction the court historians make. These weren't secret diaries. They were official records, meticulously kept, detailing pretty much every aspect of the emperor's life. And they consistently emphasize that Shah Jahan's emotional bond, his deep affection for Mumtaz Mahal, was on a completely different level. It was profound.
This wasn't just like a feeling. It translated into real status, real royal favor for her, didn't it?
Absolutely. Look at the titles she was given. The most significant one was Malika-e-Jahan,
Which means?
Queen of the World, echoing his own title, King of the World, and her personal living quarters within the palace complex, the Taj Mahal. The sources specifically mention it was lavishly decorated, inlaid with pure gold, and some of the most valuable precious stones available at the time. It was a showcase.
Wow. But she wasn't just, confined to this beautiful palace, was she? The sources suggest she was quite active.
Far more than just a consort. The records confirm she had a real interest in the empire's administration, and remarkably for the time, she didn't just stay behind in the capital. She actively traveled with Shah Jahan, accompanying him during really important diplomatic negotiations, and even, quite unusually, during military campaigns. On the battlefield, essentially.
That's incredible. So she was a trusted advisor, a Partner in ruling, almost.
It certainly seems that way. Her presence was seen as a stabilizing influence in his court. She was deeply involved.
And that constant closeness, that partnership, you see it reflected dramatically in their family life compared to his other marriages, right?
Yes, the contrast is stark. From all his other wives combined, Shah Jahan had only one child. But with Mumtaz Mahal, they had 14 children together.
14.
Yeah.
That's a huge number.
An astonishing number, really. And sadly, it's this deep devotion, this large family, that leads directly into the tragedy, the event that, according to the history, sparked the creation of the Taj Mahal itself.
The Great Grief, as it's sometimes called.
Exactly. Mumtaz Mahal died on June 17, 1631. She was with Shah Jahan, as usual, during a military campaign down in Burhanpur. She died giving birth to their 14th child.
And the records are specific about the cause.
Yes, contemporary accounts are quite clear. They list it as postpartum hemorrhage, basically, catastrophic blood loss after childbirth, a tragically common cause of maternal death at the time, and even today in some places.
And Shah Jahan's reaction? The sources paint a picture of complete devastation, don't they?
Truly dramatic terms. The court historians describe an emperor utterly paralyzed by grief. He apparently went into total isolation for a full year, just mourning her.
Wow, a whole year.
Yeah, and the accounts written then, they describe physical changes. They claim his hair turned white almost overnight, his posture became stooped, his back bent, and his face just constantly showed this deep, inconsolable despair. It apparently changed his whole appearance.
That emotional core, that intense grief, it feels absolutely central to understanding why he would then embark on such a monumental project.
It has to be. You have to understand the belief system at the time, too. In the Islamic tradition Shah Jahan followed, the grave, the tomb, was seen as the soul's final resting place on earth, waiting for the day of judgment.
So building a tomb wasn't just about remembrance.
No, it was about providing a worthy vessel for the soul. And Shah Jahan's singular goal, according to the sources, wasn't just to build a tomb, but to create a final resting place for his Malika-e-Jahan, his queen of the world, that would be. And the quote often cited is grand, unparalleled.
Unparalleled. That's a high bar.
Extremely high. This wasn't just another construction project. It was conceived as an act of supreme architectural devotion, fueled by immense grief and love.
And that devotion demanded an absolutely massive undertaking. The scale is just mind-boggling.
It really is. Construction started almost right away, around 1632. Now, the main mausoleum, the iconic white dome and the tomb chamber itself, that was largely finished by the late 1640s.
But the whole complex took longer. The gardens, the mosque.
Exactly. The entire complex, including the symmetrical mosque on one side, the matching guest house or jawab on the other, the monumental gateway, the gardens, all of that wasn't fully completed until around 1653.
So that's 22 years. 22 years of continuous work.
22 years. Just think about the logistics involved in a 17th century project running nonstop for that long.
Okay, let's talk about those logistics. The workforce, for instance. How many people are we talking about?
The sources converge on a figure of approximately 22,000 laborers working daily, every single day, for 22 years.
22,000 people a day.
It's almost unimaginable. And this wasn't just unskilled labor. It was a whole hierarchy. Master craftsmen, stonecutters specializing in marble, intricate inlay artists, masons, calligraphers, engineers, architects, alongside the general laborers.
And the people in charge, the masterminds.
Well, the intellectual capital poured into it was just as impressive as the manual labor. The chief architect is generally accepted to be Ustad Ahmad Lahori. He was a Persian architect who'd worked on other significant Mughal projects. Shah Jahan honored him with a special title.
Ah, yes, Nadir-e-Aus.
Meaning wonder of the age. That tells you the kind of respect these master builders commanded. And the incredibly beautiful calligraphy you see, the Quranic verses flowing around the arches and entrances, that was overseen by Abdul Haq Shirazi. Recognizing and importantly rewarding this kind of specialized skill was crucial to the whole enterprise.
It had to be to keep a project like that going. What about moving the materials? We're talking massive amounts of stone.
Yeah, the logistics of transport alone were immense. The sources specifically mention over 1,000 elephants being used.
1,000 elephants.
Just for hauling the huge blocks of marble and other stone, often across hundreds of miles, and then getting them onto the construction site near the Yamuna River. It wasn't just the weight, it was lifting and precisely placing these massive pieces.
And then the materials themselves.
Yeah.
Not just local stone, right? This was a global sourcing operation.
Absolutely. This is where you really see the empire's wealth and reach on full display, especially for the Pietra Dura work, that incredibly intricate inlay of colorful stones into the white marble. They used 28 different types of precious and semi-precious stones.
28 types. Can you give us some examples? Where do they come from?
It's an astonishing list, really shows the scale. Okay, so the main structure, the brilliant white marble that everyone recognizes, that came from Makrana in Rajasthan, relatively local. Jasper came from the Punjab region.
Okay, still within the empire.
Right. But then you get into the truly global stuff. Jade and crystal were imported all the way from China.
Wow.
Turquoise came from Tibet. Highly prized blue sapphire was sourced from Sri Lanka. And carnelian, a reddish stone, was brought in from Arabia.
That's an incredible network. China, Tibet, Sri Lanka, Arabia, all feeding into this one project.
It really demonstrates that this wasn't just standard imperial construction, though Mughal building was always rich. The sheer effort Shah Jahan commanded, the global procurement network activated specifically for Mumtaz's tomb, it shows this project was unique in its ambition. It really cemented this period as the golden age of Mughal architecture.
So the accepted history is incredibly detailed.
Hmm.
The personal motivation, the massive scale, the global resources, the 22-year timeline. It's all pretty well documented.
Extremely well documented by contemporary sources.
Which makes it all the more fascinating, maybe, that alongside this documented history, these really persistent, sometimes quite wild myths have grown up around it.
Understandable, perhaps, given the sheer impact and, well, the almost unbelievable scale of the achievement. Legends tend to attach themselves to things that seem larger than life.
Okay, let's tackle those myths head on then. Time to move into debunking some of the most popular stories that cloud the Taj's reputation.
Right. Let's start with probably the most famous and definitely the most gruesome legend. The myth of the mutilated workers.
Ah, yes, the story that Shah Jahan, in a fit of possessiveness, cruelty, chopped off the hands of the 20,000 workers so they could never build anything to rival the Taj.
Exactly. It's a story you hear everywhere. It pops up in folklore, gets repeated in popular articles, travel guides sometimes mention it, almost as fact.
And as our research noted, it's even been repeated by prominent public figures in India. I think a former Union Agriculture Minister, Narendra Singh Tomar, mentioned it, which shows how deeply embedded this story is, doesn't it?
It really does. It seems to tap into some kind of maybe unease about the cost of such perfect beauty, or perhaps a cynicism about the power of emperors.
But when you actually stop and think about it, just apply a little critical analysis, the logistics alone make it seem completely impossible.
Utterly impossible. I mean,
Yeah.
20,000 people. The sources we looked at raised the darkly humorous question. Did they all just queue up patiently, waiting their turn to have their hands chopped off?
Yeah, it doesn't really scan.
Of course not. The moment the first few dozen, maybe the first 100 workers were brutally maimed, the other 19,000 plus would have panicked, fled, rioted. You'd have chaos, mass desertion, not an orderly, systematic mutilation of an entire workforce. It just beggars belief from a practical standpoint.
And beyond the logistical absurdity, what about actual evidence? Is there anything, any record, any finding that supports this story?
Absolutely nothing. Zero. Zilch. According to all the historical and archaeological sources, think about it, an act of mass brutality on that scale, maiming 20,000 skilled artisans and laborers, surely someone would have written about it.
You'd expect the court historians, who meticulously recorded troop movements, finances, construction details, surely they'd mention something like that.
Precisely. They tracked expenses down to the last rupee, practically. An event like that would have had huge economic and social consequences. It would have been noted. But there's silence.
What about foreign visitors? There were European travelers in the Mughal court around that time, weren't there? They wrote detailed accounts.
Yes, people like Tavernier, Bernier, they wrote extensively about the Mughal Empire, its court, its construction projects. They didn't shy away from describing aspects of Mughal rule they found harsh or unusual. Yet none of them mentioned this supposed mass mutilation. Complete silence from contemporary observers, both internal and external.
Okay, so no written records. What about physical evidence? If you maimed 20,000 people, wouldn't there be, well, remains, mass graves, something?
You would certainly expect some archaeological trace, mass graves near the site, or at least a significant number of skeletal remains, showing that kind of trauma in the surrounding area. But nothing like that has ever been unearthed. Decades of archaeological work around the Taj complex, and no evidence supports the story.
And what really undermines the myth, for me, is the evidence that points in the complete opposite direction, evidence that Shah Jahan actually invested in these workers' futures.
Exactly. He didn't just use them and discard them. He actually commissioned the building of a whole settlement nearby, specifically for the artisans, laborers, and their families working on the Taj. It's called Taj Ganj.
Taj Ganj.
Yeah.
And people still live there today.
Yes, the descendants of those original Taj Mahal workers still live in Taj Ganj. Many of them still practice the traditional crafts, like the pietra dura inlay work, skills passed down through generations. You wouldn't build a dedicated town for workers you plan to murder or maim. It makes no sense.
And there's the bigger picture, too, right? The timeline of Mughal architecture. The Taj Mahal, incredible as it is, wasn't the end of Shah Jahan's building ambitions.
Not by a long shot. As we mentioned, this was the golden age of Mughal architecture. Almost immediately after the main work on the Taj was wrapping up, Shah Jahan needed these same skilled artisans, these same master builders and their teams for his next massive project, building an entire new capital city.
Shah Jahanabad, which we now know as Old Delhi.
Precisely, including gigantic monuments within that new city, like the massive Red Fort, the Jama Masjid, and one of the largest mosques in India. These projects required the same level of skill, the same experienced workforce that had just built the Taj.
So from a purely pragmatic, imperial viewpoint, crippling or killing your elite workforce right before you need them for arguably an even bigger project, it's just illogical.
Completely illogical. You needed to retain these skilled workers, keep them happy, keep them employed. The fact that Shah Jahanabad was built, and built so magnificently, is perhaps the strongest practical argument against the chopped hands myth. The building continued, therefore the builders were still there and still capable.
So the myth is just that a persistent piece of folklore may be born from awe or suspicion, but with absolutely no basis in historical fact or logic.
That's the clear conclusion from the evidence.
Okay, let's pivot now to the second major modern controversy, the one that's actually been playing out in the courts recently. The mystery of the 22 closed doors.
Ah, yes, the sealed rooms in the basement. This one really blew up on social media and then spilled over into the legal system.
It did. We saw, as the sources detail, a specific petition filed in the Allahabad High Court by a politician, Rajneesh Singh, who's affiliated with the BJP. And the demand was simple. Open up these 22 locked rooms or doors in the Taj's basement.
And the reasoning given in the petition, or at least the speculation surrounding it, was varied. The main claim seemed to be that these rooms might contain hidden Hindu idols, tying into the Tejo Mahalaya theory we'll discuss later.
Right. But there were also apparently more satirical suggestions mentioned in the reporting around the petition, hinting that maybe these rooms held secrets to fabled good days, like finding cheap petrol or guaranteed jobs, kind of mocking contemporary political promises.
Yeah, it became a bit of a meme almost. But the legal filing itself, the mechanism used, was a public interest litigation, or PIL.
Which is supposed to be a serious legal tool for addressing issues of genuine public concern, right?
Exactly. And the High Court's reaction was quite strong. They dismissed the petition very quickly. But they also went further, didn't they?
They did. The judges explicitly criticized the petitioner, stating that this kind of speculative filing was mocking the whole PIL system. They delivered a pretty stern message. Sorting out history is the job of historians and researchers, using established methods, not something for courts to decide based on petitions fueled by rumor.
A clear jurisdictional boundary being drawn there. So what is the actual truth behind these 22 closed doors? What does the organization responsible for the Taj, the ASI, say?
Right, the Archaeological Survey of India, the ASI, manages the site, and they've been quite clear and consistent about this. First off, the term 22 rooms is a bit misleading.
Okay, so what are they actually?
It's not really 22 distinct hidden chambers. It's more like a long, continuous corridor located in the basement underneath the main marble platform of the mausoleum. This corridor has a series of arched doorways along its length.
So more like arched cells or bays off a main passage?
Exactly. And this corridor isn't some mysterious secret. It serves a crucial structural purpose. It's part of the foundation system, helping to support the immense weight of the marble platform and the massive central dome above it.
Okay. So it's a structural feature, not a hidden repository. Is this kind of feature unusual in Mughal tombs?
Not at all, according to the ASI and architectural historians. Similar underground corridors or basement levels serving structural functions exist in other major Mughal tombs. Humayun's tomb in Delhi has something comparable. So does the later Safdarjung tomb. It seems to be a relatively standard element in their large-scale mausoleum design.
Integral to managing the load of these huge structures.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they're structural, are they permanently sealed? Or does the ASI access them?
They are definitely not permanently sealed. The ASI staff access this basement corridor regularly for maintenance, cleaning, and ongoing conservation work. That's a key point.
Okay, so they are opened, just not to the public. And what's inside? Did the ASI address the claims about idols or anything else hidden there?
Yes. ASI officials have stated publicly, and sources confirm staff accounts, that there is, quote, nothing on the walls, just bare stone, the structure itself, and evidence of the routine maintenance and restoration work they carry out. No hidden idols, no secret inscriptions, nothing sensational.
So why keep them closed to the public then? If there's nothing there, why not just let people see for themselves?
The reasoning is purely about conservation and managing the sheer volume of visitors. The Taj Mahal is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and on busy days it gets over 100,000 visitors.
100,000 people a day.
Yeah, the footfall is immense. Allowing tens of thousands of people to troop through those basement corridors every day would cause significant wear and tear. The humidity from breath, the physical contact, the vibrations, it would inevitably damage the structural integrity of the foundations over time.
Right, especially in a relatively confined basement space. It's a preservation issue.
Exactly. The ASI's official stance is pretty blunt. The areas are closed to tourists because, one, there's essentially nothing for the tourists to see down there beyond the basic structure, and two, their primary mandate is to preserve the monument for the long term, which means protecting vulnerable areas like the foundations from unnecessary stress.
That makes sense from a conservation perspective. Did they do anything else to try and quell the rumors, given how persistent they were?
They took a pretty unusual step, actually. In response to the escalating social media debate and the court case, the ASI officially released photographs of these closed basement areas on their website.
They actually published photos.
Yes, showing the corridor, the arched doorways, and some of the conservation work in progress. It was a clear attempt to provide visual evidence, to be transparent, and hopefully put an end to the wild speculation by showing people exactly what was and wasn't behind those doors.
A sort of see-for-yourself move? Did it work? Did it end the debate?
Well, the photos are out there, the court ruling is clear, the structural explanation is logical, and yet the rumors and claims still circulate online.
Which really leads us directly into the deepest, most fundamental controversy of them all, doesn't it? The one that underpins many of these other claims.
Exactly. We need to talk about the Tejo Mahalaya theory.
Okay, so let's tackle the core claim here. This is the idea that the Taj Mahal isn't a 17th century Mughal tomb at all. Instead, the theory goes, it's actually a much older structure, a Hindu temple dedicated to Lord Shiva called Tejo Mahalaya.
And the proponents of this theory give it a specific origin date, right? Sometimes cited as the 13th century, maybe built by a ruler named Raja Paramardi Dev.
That's one version, yeah. Sometimes the date 1212 AD is mentioned in petitions. The core idea is that this temple existed long before Shah Jahan, was perhaps inherited by another Rajput king, Raja Man Singh, and then was somehow acquired, or annexed, as the claim often goes, by Shah Jahan, who then just modified it into a tomb.
This is obviously a radical rewriting of the entire history we just discussed. It completely challenges centuries of documentation. So, where did this idea actually come from? It wasn't floating around in the 17th century, presumably.
No, not at all. To understand the Tejo Mahalaya theory, you have to trace it back to one specific individual who really originated and propagated it in the mid to late 20th century. His name was Purushottam Nagesh Oak, usually known as P.N. Oak.
P.N. Oak. So he's the source.
He is the architect of this entire line of argument. And it's absolutely crucial to understand who Oak was and how he approached history. He wasn't a professionally trained, peer-reviewed academic historian.
Okay, what was he then?
He described himself as a historian, but he operated outside the mainstream academic system. He founded something called the Institute for Rewriting Indian History. His project wasn't about interpreting existing evidence within historical consensus. It was about fundamentally rewriting established history based on his own unique methods. He's best described, perhaps, as a historical revisionist or even a conspiracy theorist.
And what were these unique methods? How did he arrive at such drastically different conclusions from centuries of scholarship?
This is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, quite bizarre. The stark contrast is between how professional history works relying on cross-referencing multiple contemporary written sources, archaeological findings, carbon dating, linguistic analysis, peer review by other experts, versus Oak's primary technique,
Which was?
speculative etymology, basically making huge historical claims based purely on words sounding vaguely similar across different languages and time periods.
Just based on sounds. Can you give some examples?
Okay,
'Cause that
yeah.
sounds, well, flimsy.
The sources list quite a few, and they really illustrate his methodology or lack thereof. For instance, Oak claimed that the Vatican City in Rome was originally a Hindu religious center.
The Vatican, a Hindu center. What was his evidence?
His sole evidence was that the Sanskrit word for a garden or grove, vatika, sounds a bit like Vatican. Therefore, he concluded it must have been Hindu.
Wow, okay. Any other examples?
Oh yes. He applied the same logic to claim that Westminster Abbey in London was also originally a Hindu temple, though the etymological link there is even more tenuous, if possible.
Westminster Abbey. Okay, this is quite something. Did he apply this to religions too?
Extensively. He wrote pamphlets arguing that Christianity itself was derived from Hinduism. He famously claimed the name Christianity was actually Christianity, meaning the entity or ideology of Lord Krishna.
Christianity, seriously.
Yes. And to support this, he argued, completely without any historical or textual evidence accepted by mainstream scholars, that Jesus Christ must have spent his so-called lost years between ages 13 and 30, where the Gospels are silent traveling in India and learning Krishna's teachings.
So Christianity is just borrowed Hinduism, according to Oak.
In his view, yes. And he didn't stop there. He extended this to Islam and Judaism as well. He argued they were also offshoots of Hinduism, again based on sound-alikes. Abraham the patriarch sounded like Brahma to him. Abraham's wife, Sarah, sounded like the Hindu goddess Saraswati. Moses sounded like Mahesh, which is another name for the Hindu god Shiva.
Abraham is Brahma, Sarah is Saraswati, Moses is Shiva.
His underlying thesis was that pretty much all major world religions and landmarks originated from a forgotten, ancient, global Hindu civilization or Vedic empire, and that this true history had been deliberately suppressed or covered up.
That's a very grand, all-encompassing theory. So when we look at his specific claim about the Taj Mahal being Tejo Mahalaya, we have to see it within this broader context of his methodology.
Absolutely. It's not an isolated claim. It's part of this larger pattern of rewriting history based on etymological speculation. Initially, when Oak first floated the Taj theory, he claimed it was some incredibly ancient Hindu wonder. Historians immediately pointed out the architectural style is clearly 17th century Mughal, and buildings from the truly ancient period he first suggested only survive if they're rock-cut, like cave temples.
So the architectural style itself contradicted his initial timeline.
Completely. So Oak then revised his claim, adjusting the date. He settled on a date around 1155 AD, attributing it to the chief minister of this Raja Paramardidev. He wrote all this up in a pamphlet he published himself called Taj Mahal, The True Story.
Okay, he published his own theory. Then what?
Then, in a move that really raised eyebrows in legal and historical circles, in the year 2000, Oak filed a public interest litigation, a PIL, in the Supreme Court of India, demanding the Taj be declared a Hindu temple. And the primary evidence he submitted to the court was his own pamphlet.
He used his self-published pamphlet as evidence in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
How did that go down?
About as well as you'd expect. The Supreme Court dismissed the PIL outright. The judges called his claims a misconceived notion, and in a very unusual and pointed remark from the bench, publicly rebuked Oak, suggesting he must have been bitten by a bee in his head to pursue such historically baseless arguments in court.
Bitten by a bee. Ouch. So a pretty definitive rejection from the highest court. You'd think that would be the end of it.
You would think.
Yeah.
But this is where the story takes a very modern turn. Oak's theories, despite being dismissed by academia and the courts decades earlier, found a whole new life with the rise of digital media, particularly social media and messaging platforms in the 2010s.
The phenomenon often dubbed WhatsApp University.
Exactly. These kinds of sensational, hidden history narratives are perfect fodder for viral sharing online. Oak's theories about Tejo Mahalaya, stripped of their context and dubious origins, started circulating widely as forewords, memes, videos, presented as uncovered truth.
And as these digitally recycled claims spread, they gained a veneer of legitimacy just through repetition.
Pretty much, to the point where new petitioners, like the one filing the 22 Doors case recently, started citing these old, debunked theories almost as if they were established historical facts. Sometimes even introducing slight variations, like that 1212 AD date we mentioned earlier, which wasn't even Oak's original revised date. The narrative morphed as it spread online.
So the crucial takeaway here for anyone trying to understand this controversy is that the entire Tejo Mahalaya claim doesn't stem from any actual 13th century evidence or 17th century records mentioning a temple or archaeological finds.
Correct. It's not based on primary historical sources from the period. Its origin lies squarely in the 20th century, with P.N. Oak and his highly controversial etymology-driven method of rewriting history, a method rejected by mainstream historical scholarship and ridiculed by the Indian Supreme Court.
That context is incredibly important. It really reframes the whole debate. Okay, now that we've traced the origin of that theory, let's circle back firmly to the verifiable history. Let's look at the concrete evidence, the documents, the architectural proofs that confirm the Mughal origins we discussed earlier.
Right. When we talk about verifiable history, countering the Tejo Mahalaya theory, one of the most direct points to address is the claim that Shah Jahan just forcefully seized or annexed the land from a Rajput ruler, Raja Jai Singh.
Because the Tejo Mahalaya theory kind of requires that, doesn't it? That the land, supposedly with the temple on it, was taken. What do the actual records say about the land transaction?
The records paint a very different picture, one that actually reflects the complex but often close relationships between the Mughal imperial family and the prominent Rajput royal houses, like the Kachwahas of Amber, which Raja Jai Singh belonged to.
These weren't just opposing forces. There were generations of ties, weren't there? Going back to Emperor Akbar.
Exactly. Akbar had married Harka Bai, who was the aunt of Rajaman Singh. Shah Jahan was Akbar's grandson, and Raja Jai Singh Yar, the ruler involved with the Taj land, was Raja Man Singh's grandson. So these families were closely related through marriage and decades of political and military alliance. They knew each other well.
Okay, so they were connected. What about the land itself? Was it referred to as a temple site in the records?
No. Multiple contemporary Mughal sources refer to the plot of land that Raja Jai Singh owned, the one chosen for the Taj Mahal, not as a mandir temple, but using terms like Haveli, Khana, or Manzil.
But those words mean?
They translate generally as a mansion, a house, a nobleman's residence, or palace. Essentially, it was prime riverfront property owned by Raja Jai Singh, likely containing a garden and residence, but described as personal property, not a religious site.
Okay, so it was Jai Singh's property. Did Shah Jahan just take it?
Here's the crucial part documented in the records, which completely contradicts the forceful annexation idea. According to the official Mughal chronicles and surviving documents, Raja Jai Singh actually offered to donate the land to Shah Jahan for Mumtaz Mahal's tomb. He apparently saw it as a great honor to contribute the site for the Empress's mausoleum.
He offered to give it for free?
Yes. But Shah Jahan, interestingly, refused the donation. He insisted on providing Jai Singh with fair compensation. The land wasn't seized, it wasn't even accepted as a gift, it was formally exchanged.
Exchanged for what?
Shah Jahan gave Raja Jai Singh 4 other properties, described as prime havelis or manzils, mansions, palaces, located elsewhere, in exchange for the specific riverfront plot where the Taj now stands.
And is there proof of this exchange, like a document?
Absolutely. This is the clincher. The entire transaction, the exchange of Jai Singh's Haveli for the 4 other properties, was officially recorded in a royal decree, a farman. That document is dated December 28, 1633. And critically, that farman, that official record of land exchange, still exists today.
It still exists. Where?
It's preserved in the archives of the city palace in Jaipur, the traditional seat of Raja Jai Singh's family. You can, in theory, go and see the documented proof of this negotiated land exchange.
Wow. So the idea that Shah Jahan violently annexed a temple is just completely refuted by a surviving 17th century legal document detailing a property swap between relatives.
Pretty much. The paper trail directly contradicts the core premise of the annexation claim. It was a recorded, compensated exchange of residential property between allied rulers.
That seems incredibly definitive. What about other documentation from the Mughal side supporting the project?
Beyond the land deed, the sheer volume of contemporary Mughal records about the Taj project itself is overwhelming. The Mughals, especially under Shah Jahan, were meticulous record keepers. We have the official court histories, like the Patshanama we mentioned.
The Chronicle of the King of the World.
Right. It details the project's conception after Mumtaz's death, the selection of the site, the appointment of architects and craftsmen, the sourcing of materials, the construction timeline, the enormous costs involved. It's all laid out in the official history commissioned by Shah Jahan himself.
Are there other confirming sources?
Yes. Besides the official chronicles, there are accounts in other contemporary writings, and modern historians like Wayne Begley and Z.A. Desai have compiled and analyzed these primary Mughal sources extensively in works like their book Taj Mahal, the Illumined Tomb, providing a very detailed, evidence-based account of the tomb's commission and construction by Shah Jahan.
So a wealth of contemporary textual evidence. What about the official stance of the bodies responsible for the monument today, like the ASI and the Indian government?
Their position has been consistently firm and aligned with the historical record. The Archaeological Survey of India, which manages and studies the site, has stated repeatedly over the years that they have found absolutely no evidence, not archaeological, not structural, not textual, to support the claim that the Taj Mahal was built on or incorporates a pre-existing Hindu temple.
And the government itself. Has it weighed in?
Yes. For instance, back in 2015, the Union Culture Minister at the time, Mahesh Sharma, made an official statement in Parliament confirming the government's position. There is no evidence suggesting the Taj was a temple, and all existing evidence points to it being a tomb built by Shah Jahan in the 17th century, so both the archaeological body and the government ministry responsible are unanimous on this.
Okay, so we have the land deed, the court chronicles, the government's official stance. What about the building itself? Does the architecture scream 17th century Mughal tomb or 13th century temple?
The architecture is perhaps the most powerful, visible piece of evidence. The entire style, the design philosophy, the materials, the techniques, they all firmly place it within the specific context of 17th century imperial Mughal architecture, which was a unique blend of influences.
What influences are we talking about?
It deliberately synthesizes traditions from Timurid architecture,
Iran.
from Shah Jahan's ancestor, Timur in Central Asia, from Persia, where many architects and styles originated, and blended them with existing Indian architectural traditions and motifs. This fusion, the syncretic style, is the absolute hallmark of high Mughal art and architecture, reaching its zenith under Shah Jahan. It looks nothing like documented 12th or 13th century North Indian temple architecture.
Can you point to specific features, like the layout?
Absolutely. Look at the overall plan. The entire complex is rigidly symmetrical, organized around a huge charbagh garden.
The charbagh, that's the four-part garden, right?
Exactly. It's a classic Persian garden design, divided into 4 quadrants by walkways and water channels, intended to symbolize the gardens of paradise, as described in the Quran. This concept is central to Mughal imperial gardens and mausoleums, like Humayun's tomb again, but it's not characteristic of Hindu temple layouts. The whole site plan is Islamic and imperial in conception.
And the engineering. We touched on the workforce, but the design itself must have been sophisticated.
Incredibly sophisticated. Let's go back to those 4 tall minarets standing as the corners of the marble platform. We mentioned they're not perfectly vertical.
Right, they lean slightly outwards. Why is that significant again?
It's a brilliant piece of structural engineering foresight. They were deliberately designed to lean outwards by a few degrees. The reason? In the catastrophic event of a major earthquake powerful enough to topple them, they would fall away from the central tomb, protecting the main mausoleum and the cenotaphs of Mumtaz and Shah Jahan within it.
Wow, so it's a built-in safety feature. That requires some serious planning.
It shows an advanced understanding of structural dynamics and a paramount concern for protecting the core tomb. That kind of calculated engineering is characteristic of major imperial projects of that era.
What about the decoration? That incredibly detailed inlay work, the pietratura.
Yes, the pietratura. We mentioned the 28 types of stones used. The technique itself involves carving incredibly precise cavities into the hard marble surface and then setting perfectly cut, thin pieces of polished colored stones into them, fitting them together like a jigsaw puzzle to create intricate designs, mostly floral motifs and calligraphy.
It looks almost like painting with stone.
It does. It's unbelievably painstaking work. A single floral scroll might contain hundreds, even thousands, of tiny, individually shaped and fitted pieces of lapis lazuli, jade, carnelian, jasper, mother of pearl. The style of these floral designs, the geometric patterns used in the borders, and especially the flowing Arabic calligraphy of Quranic verses integrated into the decoration, these are all absolutely typical of Islamic art, and specifically 17th century Mughal aesthetics. They bear no resemblance to the sculptural traditions of 13th century Hindu temples.
And the calligraphy itself, you mentioned an optical illusion.
Yes, another mark of the sophisticated design. The bands of Quranic calligraphy that run high up around the grand arches of the entrance portals, the letters are actually carved in subtly increasing sizes as they go higher up the arch.
Ready that.
So that when you, the viewer, stand on the ground looking up, the perspective foreshortening is canceled out. The letters appear to be perfectly uniform in size all the way up, making them legible and aesthetically balanced. It shows a deep understanding of optics and viewer perception, typical of highly refined architectural traditions.
That's fascinating. And the marble itself, it's famous for changing color.
Right, the white Macrana marble was likely chosen partly for this quality. It reacts beautifully to different light conditions. Sources and observers note it can appear soft pinkish at dawn, a dazzling, almost blinding white in the midday sun, and then take on a cool, ethereal, silvery blue glow under moonlight. It gives the monument a dynamic, living quality.
So every element, the layout, the engineering, the decorative style, the materials, the optical refinements, it all points to a cohesive 17th century Mughal design.
Overwhelmingly so.
Yeah.
And perhaps the final poignant piece of architectural evidence is the one slight break in the otherwise perfect symmetry.
Shah Jahan's own tomb.
Exactly. The entire complex is designed with bilateral symmetry around a central axis running through the middle of Taj Mahal's cenotaph. But when Shah Jahan died, his son Aurangzeb placed his cenotaph right next to Mumtaz's, slightly off-center. It's the only asymmetrical element in the main tomb chamber.
Kind of a human touch at the end, disrupting the perfect plan.
You could see it that way. It grounds the monumental perfection in the reality of their shared final resting place. But even this imperfection confirms the original focus was Mumtaz.
So when you pull all this verifiable evidence together, the land deed, the court records, the government position, the architectural style, the engineering details, the decorative motifs, what's the inescapable conclusion?
Every single thread of credible evidence points consistently in one direction. The Taj Mahal was commissioned by Shah Jahan, designed and built in the mid-17th century by Mughal architects and artisans as a mausoleum for his wife Mumtaz Mahal, using a style and techniques characteristic of that specific time and culture. The Tejo Mahalaya theory, originating from P.N. speculative methods, simply doesn't align with any of this substantial historical and physical evidence.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize everything we've unpacked in this deep dive. When you weigh the entire body of evidence, the contemporary court chronicles from the Mughal era, the explicit land transaction records still preserved today, the consistent findings of the Archaeological Survey of India, and the undeniable message of the 17th century architecture itself, the conclusion seems pretty solid, doesn't it?
It really does. The academic, archaeological, and contemporary historical sources overwhelmingly converge. They confirm the Taj Mahal as a commission by Shah Jahan, a masterpiece representing the peak of 17th century Mughal architecture, conceived and executed as an unparalleled tomb for Mumtaz Mahal.
The evidence supporting this narrative is vast, detailed, and spans centuries.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the counterclaims, specifically the Tejo Mahalaya theory, as we've seen, don't stand up to basic historical scrutiny. They originate not from primary evidence, but from disputed 20th century theories based on flawed methodologies like speculative etymology, theories that have been rejected by mainstream historians and even the courts.
Yet, despite the weight of evidence, the Taj Mahal's legacy isn't simple, is it? It continues to evoke really strong, sometimes conflicting emotions and interpretations.
Absolutely. It exists in this dual space. On one hand, you have the powerful romantic interpretation, the symbol of eternal love. This is beautifully captured by poets like Shakil Badayuni, who wrote lines translating to something like, "An emperor, through great wealth, built the majestic Taj Mahal and thus gave the world a symbol of love."
That's the dominant image, the one promoted to the world.
It is. But then, on the other hand, you have a critical perspective, one that focuses on the immense cost, the imperial power, the potential exploitation behind the beauty. The poet Sahir Luthyanvi offered a stark counterpoint with lines suggesting an emperor displaying his imperial might built this beautiful monument, thereby mocking the love of us common folk.
So one sees a tribute to love, the other sees a display of power that diminishes ordinary love. Both are reacting to the same incredible structure, but drawing opposite meanings from it.
Exactly. Both perspectives acknowledge the sheer scale and impact of the monument, but they interpret its moral and social legacy very differently.
So where does that leave us, and you, the listener, today? We've looked at the history, the myths, the controversies. What's the real takeaway?
Well, perhaps the real mystery surrounding the Taj Mahal today isn't actually what might be hidden behind those 22 basement doors. Because, as the ASI has shown and explained, the answer is mundane: structural corridors under conservation. The historical record is also quite clear about its origins.
So the mystery isn't historical.
Maybe the real puzzle is sociological or even psychological. Why do these claims that are so easily debunked by readily available historical records, archaeological facts, and even basic logic, continue to persist so strongly? Why do they find such traction, especially online, even after official clarifications, photographic evidence, and court dismissals?
That persistence is fascinating. It suggests that maybe these ongoing debates about heritage sites like the Taj aren't always genuinely about uncovering historical truth.
Perhaps they're often more about contemporary issues: identity politics, nationalism, rewriting narratives to fit modern agendas, or simply the appeal of a hidden truth conspiracy theory in an age of information overload and mistrust.
Which leads to a final, maybe provocative thought for you to ponder after this deep dive. In an era where information and misinformation is instantly accessible, why do demonstrably false theories about major historical landmarks cling on so tenaciously?
What responsibility does each of us have as individuals to actually engage with the verifiable evidence, to check the facts about our nations or the world's most iconic monuments before we accept or share narratives that contradict centuries of proof?
The history of the Taj Mahal seems quite clearly written in stone and documented in records. But the ongoing mystery might be why we, today, sometimes choose to read a completely different story. Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about.